We are starting with an introduction, then the other guys will find us on the way. Will that be okay? Yeah. It's because communication was sent, and we will be starting from 9 to 5 in the evening for the next 5 days. That's from Monday to Friday. So you could arrange so that you are available at that time from 9 to 5 in the evening, which is 9 in the morning. Yeah? So I don't know how many of us were able to download the material, the student material that from the link that was distributed. Everyone was able to download, right? Yeah. So that material included the activity guide. It also included the study guide. It also included the lab materials. So you can just confirm so that if you don't have, then I will give you the files.
Well, that's why I have to keep training nowadays.
You are downloading now?
I'm training.
Okay.
Say it's still
Yeah, it will come. It is already downloaded. Yeah. Then the other thing I would like to say is that after the training, you will have, from the same place you are downloading your material, there will be, after the training, there will be a link for you to download your certificate. So in the process, we will be signing in. When we sign in online, you are required to give your names as you would like them appear in your certificate. Okay? Because those are the names that will be used to print out the certificate, which is downloadable at the end of the course. So it's something that you can download. But at the same time, you take a certification exam. I don't know if there is a testing center in Kampala. There is.
There is.
You work it here. So Oracle Java. So that's the good. Now this module we are going to cover is Java SE programming, Java SE7 programming. There is a course that is meant for fundamentals, for people who are starting to develop applications. So this is the second stage in Java programming as far as Oracle courses are concerned. So this is the second stage. The first stage is Java SE7 fundamentals, which we don't want to go there because you guys are already using Java, or you are already teaching object-oriented programming using Java, and we would not want to go back to fundamentals because we will have to take another week for studying things that you may already be knowing. Okay. So this is the second stage. There is a fundamental stage, second, and then there is a third stage called Java EE, Java Enterprise Edition, where you develop web applications. Okay. That's the next stage after this. So we're going to start to look at what are we expecting in this course. What are we expecting at the end of Friday this week? What are we expecting to have covered? What do we expect to have covered? So it is meant to extensively give us an understanding of the various application programming interfaces that are used in Java, which you can then, after you know all the interfaces, you can use the same interfaces in web applications. Okay? So we would like to develop the skills of an Oracle certified application developer. And we want to create Java technology applications of the right object. We want to code in how do we apply the object-oriented programming concepts that we already learned in practical terms to develop applications that can query data from databases, connect to other machines using sockets, multi-threaded applications, input-output applications that read from the hard disk and those kind of stuff. So like it's a requirement that we skipped that course, the previous course, because it's a prerequisite to this, but we'll not go into that. Let me just mention about the course content briefly. We're going to review Java syntax and class review, which is a course that has been done in the previous module, which we're not going to do because some of us are already using Java or they have already even developed applications using Java. Then we move forward to encapsulation and subclassing. This is the concept of inheritance in object-oriented programming. Then we'll proceed to class Java design, advanced class Java design, inheritance and interfaces, generics and collections, talking about array lists, talking about hash maps, okay, typed lists, talking about stacks, how it is implemented in Java, and also queues, how we can use them in Java as well. Then we have string processing. String processing is an important chapter in this module because it exposes us to various ways in which we can process strings. Okay? You could be doing a knowledge base in artificial intelligence where you need to be processing strings, a number of them. So this is the module that will expose us to the API that is responsible for string processing in Java. Then we have exceptions and assertions. Exceptions and assertions. How do we handle errors in the process of our programming practice? How do we get to handle errors? Supposing I'm trying to access a network resource and I don't find it. How do I inform a user appropriately? Because they might not understand the errors that Java is, the virtual machine is printing out. How do you inform your user and how do you even keep track of those errors? How do you keep track of the errors that your application encounters? So we will be talking about exceptions and assertions. We also have Java I/O. I/O is input output. How do we access our hard disk? Whether it's a network hard disk or a local hard disk, so that we can create files, write into files, and also read from files. So we'll be able to do that in this module called Java I/O. And this is an introductory module for I/O. But there's a new set of classes that are meant to do Java input output called new I/O in Java. Then we will proceed to threading. This is also very important in programming practice. How do you get to develop applications that have different threads running concurrently at the same time? You could have 10 threads, you could have 5 threads, you could have 2 threads. That is apart from the main thread. Apart from the main thread, how do you get to build applications that are multi-threaded, so that while you are accessing a filter, at the same time you are accessing a remote machine, a remote server perhaps, using a socket or a network address. Okay. Then we will move to concurrency. Concurrency comes about due to multi-threading. Supposing 2 or more threads want to access a certain resource, how do we manage that there is a timely and concurrent way in which our threads are accessing resources? So that brings in the concept of concurrency. We want to manage our threads we create so that they do not scramble for the resources that are available. Okay. Then we have building database applications with JDBC. This is where we connect to various database applications. We manipulate data, we read data, we execute data definition language statements, data manipulation language statements, ETL. After that, then we can localize our application. Localization means we want to deploy in our application. We want to deploy our application, and we want to deploy in various places. We want to deploy in Russia, France. We want to deploy in UK. We want to deploy in Uganda. So we want to take care of all those languages, so that somebody is in Russia will see Russian text. Somebody who is in Uganda will see Ugandan text. Somebody is in France, they will see French text, even Chinese text. So that is localization of our application as we deploy it. Right, so now, what are we required to have this, for this course? We are required to have JDK. This is Java Development Kit 7, version 7, and also NetBeans version 7.0 and above, even 7.3, 7.4. So we are required to have installed this. This is what contains the libraries. JDK contains all the libraries you will use to access hard disk, to access a network, to create threads, to create database applications. JDK is a key here. NetBeans is a development environment to aid you use JDK appropriately. NetBeans is a development environment to aid you in developing your application. So I have with me the installation kit. So if you don't have JDK, you can pick it with me if you didn't manage to install one. Then we can install the latest JDK 7. Update 45. The current version is JDK update 45. Then we have NetBeans 7.4. Okay. So if you are using the both versions are here. If you are using a 32-bit machine, you will have it, that is by 86. If you are using a 64-bit machine, by 64. You will also have it this again. So that will be our development environment for this course. You have the JDK, copy it from here as a program. Yeah, unless you have a flat disk, I can put the text on. So that's the environment we will be working from. And as we develop Java applications, we say Java are platform independent. They don't depend on any platform. What is the meaning of this being Java programs being platform independent? In this case, platform, we mean the operating system. it does not depend on the operating system where it can run from, because the Java code, the Java files that we are going to develop will be compiled into bytecode. This bytecode, for it to run, requires Java runtime environment. So all you need to do to run a Java program is JRE, Java runtime environment, which can be installed in Solaris, Linux, or Windows. Therefore, if you develop your application in Windows, you can still run it in Linux. You can still run a program developed in Linux, you can run it in Windows. Similarly to Solaris. So we say they are platforms, so you don't have to worry. You can develop in any platform and deploy to any platform. That's the constant factor here. The constant factor is JRE, Java Runtime Environment. And when you install JDK, the ones we just built, it will install JRE automatically if it detects that it's not installed. So JDK will do that for you if it detects that you are unable to run your programs. Then Java Technology Products. We have applications that can run on servers. Server applications, and we are developing those in Java Enterprise Edition. We have desktop applications. We also have, which we develop using Java Standard Edition. We also have a mobile edition for developing midlets, for example. This is programs that run in our mobile phones. So that is mobile edition. So if you want to develop a program to run in a Nokia phone, for example, then you would use Java mobile edition. It will be installed automatically when you install the JDK and NetBeans. Then you have Java for the car, Java TV for remote controlling. So in this case, it means that for us, we will be here, Java SE. That means we can develop applications that will run on server, desktop, as well as part of embedded devices. Okay, so that's why I was saying after Java SE, the next course for you will be Java Enterprise Edition, so that you can develop web applications to run in browsers, which we can host either in Classfish or WebLogic. Okay, so these stuff are free. The word I've just given you is free. You can download like this, downloading a version for Mac machine so that you can install. So if you are developing applications that run on the web, then you will host them with Classfish or WebLogic. Database servers for Oracle, we have MySQL, Oracle database. So we can connect to any of these when we are doing database application. We'll get to that towards the end of the So Java is very start with an yeah, so we will be reviewing the Java syntax briefly. These are relatively common stuff.
It's okay.
It's coming.
Yeah.
120, then I would use this. Because a mobile phone is resource limited, it does not have a lot of memory to store so much, unlike a computer, which has quite huge chunk of memory. So, byte, we have byte, which starts from negative 128 to 127. So, if you know your value is within this range, then you don't need to use it. Just settle for byte. Same for short, same for any long range. So you can see the value keeps increasing depending on how you want to do it. The same thing applies to floating point types. Okay. Java SE7 numerals. Now, from Java SE7, we are able to declare our variables in such a way that we can have them to be more readable. For example, I have a credit card number which is of type long, and I can separate the numbers with underscores, which is allowed in this compiler of Java SE7, but in the lower versions it's not allowed. Okay, so I can declare them with underscores in between. That is the difference. For hexadecimal notation, you can do it like this. You can also separate them with underscores, similarly to binary, the binary versions of numbers. Okay. So same as binary literals, you can do that. So this is just for readability purposes. It does not mean anything special. For purposes of readability, for you to be able to see your code and clearly interpret it. Then we have the famous operators of ours to give us the various summations and mathematical operations that we need. They don't change. It's the same thing as when you do your normal mathematics. Equals to means you are assigning. Plus means you are adding, dividing. If you want a remainder, then you would use the modulo sign. This is the modulo sign. Then plus means you want to increment a number. Minus means you want to decrement a number. So this is very common when you are doing looping. When you are looping in your applications. Okay, so if you say plus, if you use this plus sign with strings, then you will do a concatenation. So in this case, we are concatenating hello and world, so that you can form hello world. But if you use a plus with integers or float point types, then you will be doing an addition as opposed to concatenation. So the compiler will understand that these are integers, and if a plus sign is applied to them, you will be adding them. If it's a string, you will be adding it. Yeah, so we're going to look at more on strings, like there are functions which you can use automatically to concatenate. So you don't have to use concat, you don't have to use the plus sign anymore. You can use the predefined functions that help you to concatenate strings instead of using concat. Then we have a famous if else statement for selection. That this works as case statement for doing so. If n is equals to b, so the double equal sign in this case is used for comparing not for assignment, but to test equality. That's the two numbers equal to each other. So this is for testing equality numbers, not for assignment. And then if they are equal, you can do something else. If they are not equal, you can do some other thing. Then you can nest them using LC, or various actions. So here we are just passing through the various terminologies that are there on the predicate, which we are going to ignore. So if I'm testing for equality, I will use this. If I'm testing for not equal to, I will use that. If I'm checking on greater than, I will use this. Greater than or equal to, less than. And then there are conditional operators, which you would find yourself needing to use most of the time. And conditional operator or then these are shorthand for if else. You can use these to test for else test. Okay. So you can also use for each. This is used for strings. This is since Java SE7. For example, I have an array of strings, and at location 0 I put blue shirt, at location 1 I put 0 red shirt, at array position 2 I put black shirt. For me to be able to display those the contents of this array, I would use a for loop, but this would also serve for me a new syntax. So you say you are pulling a string from an array. When you pull a string value, you store it in a variable called name. So every value you pull from the array, you store it in a variable called name. Then you can output that value. So that's like doing a for each loop, looping with for each. Same case for numbers. You plug a value from the array and you store it in a certain variable, which is called in this case number. I can change the name of this variable. It doesn't have to be number. I can give it another name, as long as I stick to it also on this side. Okay. So, but the traditional for loop would look like this. Inherited from C++. This is the same thing that we have on the other side. Then we have a while loop. This is testing if we've traversed the entire array. While I is less than numbers.length. Numbers.length will give us the length of the array. What do? We keep displaying them on this side. So then the switch statement. The switch statement. Notice that we are not using for case traditionally. We used to use, it was only restricted to integers. Case 1, case 2, case 3, case 4. And in this case, we can even use strings for case 8. For JDK 7. That is why we need to be in the right environment to be able to test this. So, blue, red, and then default. The structure remains the same, only that now it can handle both integers and strings, as well as characters. Then the naming conventions that we will adopt is like public class, credit card. How do you name your classes? It is always a standard practice to start with the capital letter for the first name of the class, followed by.
Excuse me, guys. Is there anyone of you as I say on the list? Seems one of you as I say.
What are you saying?
On the list that was moving around. Okay.
It's fine.
Yeah, so the naming convention starts with caps for credit card. Then for final values, we use caps for both. Then for fields and variables, you start with a small case, then followed by caps on this side. So for functions also, we start with small letter, followed by caps letter for the next word, which is coming. So that gives us this kind of arrangement. For example, we have a class called employee. These are the fields. This is the constructor. These are the methods. So what is the job of a constructor in object-oriented technology concepts? Constructor. Yes.
It's used to instantiate.
Giving?
Used to create an instance of an object.
Yes. What? That's one of the job.
Initialize member fields.
Yes. Those are the two roles of a member of a constructor. Number one is to create an object out of the class. Number 2 is to initialize the member fields, to give it values. Like this is a name, this is employee ID, this is a social security number, and this is salary. But they don't have values now. So the constructor's job is to create an instance of this class where we can assign real values to the employee ID, name, social security number, and salary. So once we have our object, we can assign these values, and that can be done in the constructor. So when you instance it, like for example, let's say we have a company and we have employees. Now we want to create an employee. We create an employee by instantiating this class. How do we instantiate that class? We say employee M is equals to new employee. This is called instantiating that class. Now we have an instance of that class, and we can assign values to a real employee who we have in that company. We can assign employee ID, we can assign social name, we can assign social security number, we can also assign salary. With that, and we could also use the constructor to assign. The other way that a constructor comes in is that instead of saying employee without, we can pass values. We can say new employee. Then we pass a value for social security number. We pass another parameter for name. We pass another parameter for salary, and so forth, depending on how many fields you have in the class. And these values will translate to values of the fields. So we'll get to do that practically. The idea here is to first get the concept and translate it to code. Now methods. In a class we have fields. For every field in your class, you have a setter and a getter method. The setter method is to give the field a value. The setter method is to assign a value to the field. The getter method is to retrieve the value. For example, I want to use the value in a certain calculation. I will use the getter method to get the value of that field. For me to give it a value of that field, I have to use the setter method. And getter and setter methods are always, the access type is public. In this case, the access type is public for me, so that I'm exposed to those methods to assign the values to. The other name for setter method is setter method is mutator methods. So we cannot call them setter method. We can call them setter or mutator methods, because they change the value of the field, so they mutate the value of those fields. The accessor method, then we have accessor methods, which is getter also. So we have either accessor or getter methods. So those are the concepts that we need to handle. And I've already talked about this, creating an instance of employee class. Employee and is equals to new employee. And we can assign our values to our fields. Employee.id is equals to 101, employee.set, employee ID is equals to. This is the same thing as this. This will work, but it's not good practice, not standard practice. Instead of exposing your methods, your fields, like this, you better use the set method. Then there is set name, set SSN, set salary. So after you create your object, you use the set methods to give it values. Then you can, if you want to save it in a database, then that will be some other. So, any question on this? So we are free to ask questions in the process of this training, and then at one point if you need to clarify something, just raise your hand, we will have it clarified. Yeah, good. And then we come to our constructors, which we've talked about. So a constructor is used to create an instance of a class. That's its job. The other job is that it also takes arguments, or constructors can take parameters, which will then be used to instantiate the values of the fields, to assign values to the fields. And then a constructor that takes no arguments is called no argument constructor. It's not taking any arguments. Yeah, then we come back to this. So I would like us to put settlement. We talked about that. We import this field so that you will access the various libraries that we want to use. Java pass by value. Pass by value, pass by reference. There are normally two ways in which methods can communicate in Java. You either pass arguments by value or you pass by reference. Now in memory, if I create a variable, let's say for example int x equals to 10, the computer will reserve a memory space for this variable, and it will store 10 in that space. Let's say this is address A. So address A in your computer will be having the value 10 in your integer. Now I can refer to this value either by the variable name or by the address. I can get this value through the variable name or the address, because I can directly access the address. So I can get it through the address or the variable name. Now in Java, if I want to pick this method, I want to pass this value 10. I either copy this value and pass it to another method that is now passing by value. I copy the value and pass the value 10. Or I pass the address where my value is stored. Now that is passing by reference. Or I copy the value and pass the exact. That is passing by value. So the one that is passing the value is called pass by value. If I pass this address, then I will be doing pass by reference, because I am giving the reference to the location of the value which will be accessed. So the value is copied and passed. That is for this case. So it will copy x to variable y, and in this case the memory will have two variables. It will have two memory locations with the same value. So if I pass by value, I will have another location called y, which is address B. The value is the same, 10. So if you can manage, it is more efficient to pass by addresses, not by value, because you will not be using up memory space. Okay, so it is important to distinguish these two: pass by value and pass by reference. Pass by value copies the value of the variable and passes to the other method. Pass by reference keeps the address of the variable in the other method so that it can access the variable using the address instead of that. So pass by value for object references, same as this. So objects, normally when you are dealing with objects, instead of the primitive types, you will find yourself passing parameters by reference or value. Okay. Then there is this concept of garbage collection. Once you have used all your variables, the variable or is it primitive types or objects, once you've used them, we need to reclaim that memory space with the occupied. Because we need that space for use by other programs or the same program doing another thing. So once you are no longer using a variable, that space we need to reclaim. That program is called garbage collection, which frees memory spaces that were used before and they are no longer referenced by one program. It makes that space available for other programs to use that memory recognition. So that process is called garbage collection, the process of freeing up memory for other programs to use it or for your program to use it in doing other things. Okay, so that is garbage collection. And it's a process that runs automatically by Java Virtual Machine, but you can also invoke it as a programmer. You can invoke this process so that you also have more memory to work with. Yes. Then as our installations continue, I think we have a visitor from So let's finish with the installation because the next step will be doing the labs.
Hello everyone, how are you? Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
I just want to say thank you very much for attending. I know it's a sacrifice. We are requesting that you please attend for 5 days. We are investing into this to make sure that we ensure that the skills that you have is updated. And I'm hoping that you will enjoy the session. We were with him last week in Kenya and he was doing the same thing to different universities. I know you will enjoy the session. The feedback that we got was amazing, so I can't wait for feedback again, so that is very good. And secondly is he will advise you how you will get the certificates once the course is over. Okay. The third thing is please make sure that he attends the full session because for us we have paid. It's part of our giving back. It's that simple. The other things for me is I just wanted to introduce you on the internet.
Yes.
No. I just want you to know this site. As it's loading. So it's academy.oracle.com. Okay. I'm part of a department called Oracle Academy, and Oracle Academy targets teachers and faculty members, and we target from high school to universities. So the different programs that is available there. First, there is programs we have the introduction, which is the beginning, or it's called Basic Java Fundamentals, which can be taught at year 1 or it can be taught at high school. This is where people are able to be more innovative, creative, and they are able to make their 3D movies. or even tell their stories. Some go all the way to games. So this has also been introduced also at the innovation centers. Okay, that is one. Number two is there is the advanced computer science, which is mostly taught at the university level. So it has from software, so that you can get software, which you're able to download in the different labs. So we're talking about software from Java, database, all the way to middleware. When you have your web logic and everything else, you're able to download it there. Why do we do this? Is that for us, it's sustainable to train the faculty members or to train the people who use it, and then they're able to train their students, or students can take advantage of that via the people who support it. Okay? So what happens is that you need to log on. For example, we want to make sure that maybe we log on per department, so we can say computer for computer studies, and then we can go to GIS. They can log on themselves, and then whoever logs in logs the rest of the people in. So you just have to say GIS. And then if you have people within your department, they can log under you. If you're a faculty member, then you can have the students log in under you. Why is that important? Is that, you see, for example, when you learn Java, or as a core subject, I don't know, is Java a core subject here? Do you teach Java as a core subject?
Yeah.
Okay. So for example, if you have Java, for me, I don't understand how you teach somebody for 4 years, and then the person goes to, after 4 years, you go do a certificate, you learn for 4 years, and then go do your exams. So it needs to be updated or embedded so that you're able to pick a few things that you're learning and you can teach. By the time they're finished, then they can go just do the exam. Okay? So the students are able to get a voucher, and I know here there's a testing center. So they get a voucher, and based on that, they'll get discounts. So there's a 25% discount. But it's only the faculty member who can do that. Either the faculty member or someone who's in the system, and the other people log under them, and they'll be able to give the students the voucher. So that is very, very important. What else is available? There is support, there is resources available, there is curriculum available. So you're able to look at what there is, and just you can be able to be picking stuff out of there. So we're still trying to load. And then the last bit of the program is we have one called business application. Business application is whereby you're able to get products which are used in the industry. These are products that are sold in the industry. But from a university perspective, in terms of you being a faculty member or for the students, you're able to get it. Example, you're able to get the enterprise business suite, which contains one, it has the financials, it has HR, it has your payroll, it has supply, procurement. What we're saying is that, for example, when you're teaching a class of supply management, you're able to pick the component of it, so making the courses more practical. You're able to pick a component of it and you can be able to teach. And say, guess what, this is the software that you'll be experiencing in the industry, it's good for you to be able to learn. So you are able to learn the procurement, for example, know how it's going to be. You're able to learn how to do a payroll. It's not theory, but now it's practical how the software is. So it's also available in the program. So just make sure you, I know it's still trying to load. I don't know how to spell this thing is. So this is what I was talking about. So this is the site, academic.oracle.com. They're different, as you can see, there's the introduction, the advanced, the business. When you click on, for example, the advanced, okay, as it's loading, you will see there is the technology. Yes. So there is the technology. This is where you get the software from. There is a curriculum. Okay. Then there is a training, which is part of this training, okay? There is the certification, okay, which I said yourself or even the students can get discounts, okay? Which is, I call it an extra certificate because it's a bonus certificate, it's an industry certificate. So it is good. And then there's a community, you're able to interact with other community people. Community here doesn't mean only Uganda, but different countries are able to find out exactly what they're doing. And then membership is how you join. So you join from there. Don't mind about the fee, just don't mind the fee. If you want to join, just join. But we need somebody, one person from each department. So e.g., you can't have like six, all of them decide to join. It's one person has to join and then everybody comes in under that. Okay, so there can't be many people in the department. And then let me just show you how it works. So when I talked about the introduction, you can see something called Alice. So Alice is part of the introduction. It was there earlier. Once here, this one is part of the introduction. Alice is what helps you make, teaches you how to make 3D movies, and that's okay. So it's amazing for you guys. I found the other day we did a test, and some kids from primary were taught. Let me tell you, those kids have like within less than 2 weeks, because they learned it within less than 2 weeks. They have like 5-10 projects. Okay, for them it's fun. It's a fun way of learning, they're enjoying it. I tried it myself. I only had, character-wise in creating a movie, I only had 2 characters. These guys had like 10. They had a classroom and a teacher waking up and moving and coming in and sitting, and so the kids are more creative than us. So it's good to make sure that we are able to expose the kids early, and this is a good program. So I'm trying to imagine your first years. This is something that they should know early. So we're trying to develop more innovators. So even if you have a club like your computer club or something, this will be good. Okay? So that's membership. So there is per department. I want you guys to join per departments. So those are the instructions of joining per department. Then there is a faculty member that comes in and the students. So there is a way it plugs in into each and every one. I think that would be it from me, unless you have any questions. Sorry, but I have to leave today. Yeah, I had to make sure that the class starts. For us, as I said, this is an investment, and if the class is not between 16 people, then I can't have a class. So I know people on their way. So yeah. Okay. Yes.
Thank you for that introduction. Just a point again, that yes, I've seen quite a lot of certification paths in Oracle and the like, but there's one issue we have here, that the end product, which is the actual industry certification, you guys are very few centers here, and just currently there's a student of mine already certified as a programmer, but when he sat for that exam, he was the first guy to ever use that center for that certification, and it's been around for quite some time. So my advice is that you need to maybe make students aware that you can actually get these industrial grade certifications from a given point, if it's affiliated to you, so that they know where to go. Because for me, I moved like around 4 different areas to find out where they have to give Oracle certifications, live along with non-industrial grade.
Okay, let me ask you. I thought in Makerere there is, when I went to this College of Computer Science, there is a center there.
Yes, eventually went there, but it was because I had some knowledge about it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So what you this is what you do, and it's part of our awareness that we need to do. Is when you go to Oracle.com itself, and you're looking for a center, there's a place to search a center. You're able to go to the country and look for the centers, the institutions will offer the certification. So they can tell you. Personally, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know the centers in Uganda. But I know there's one at this university. Computer Break, you have an office here. You also have an office here, and you offer exams here. You don't. Only here. Okay. Fine, but I take your feedback. feedback. And anytime,
Many other
Yes.
I don't know. You just need to go search to give you a list. Tell me your faculty number 4. Sorry, we didn't even do introductions. I'm sorry. My name is Jerry Minor, and I work for Oracle. I champion education among in Africa, and I also part of. So when we say champion, is that Oracle Academy this is part of giving. So I also take care of the giving bit, which incorporates some of the CSR activities that we do in different countries. So that's what I take care of. Okay? And I've been with Oracle now for about 2 years. Used to work in Microsoft before, and then used to work in Intel. So in terms of education championing, I've been there for around 6 years.
When you refer to normal school, I teach physics.
Oh, you teach physics. Your friend?
I'm Dennis Wamana. I work at DICS as a web admin.
I'm Katongo Juma, database admin.
What database are you on?
Oracle.
We are Brian Henry, IT support systems and building and one technology.
Hardware.
Very bad.
What did you say the last bit?
One technology.
What are you technologies?
IT systems
Oh.
and building.
Okay.
And then Flash, then one technology is company as a private.
Okay.
Patrick Sitchkoni, Makerere University Library, and I'm a librarian. I'm in charge of digital trainings, like trainings in digital technologies.
In charge of what training?
Trainings in use of digital technologies.
Okay. Thank you.
David Wakura, assistant lecturer.
Four?
College of Law.
Kamlelia Grace, assistant lecturer, College of Law.
Oh, sorry, I can't hear you.
Kamlelia Grace, assistant lecturer, College of
College?
Computing.
Okay. College of Computing, okay. It's good to have an IQ class, let me just, I'm excited, okay.
Assistant lecturer, College of Computing.
Nasa Chibukwe, teaching assistant, College of Computing.
Welcome.
Alpha was a superior. It was also supporting me.
I just opened the technology for you to see which technologies you can get. And so with your database and everything else, your web logic, these are some of the things that are available. Thank you, everybody, and have a good day. All the best in your training. Please, that's my email address. I don't know if you can see it from behind. Jerry.minor@oracle.com. Feel free to write to me. Feel free to give me any feedback on how the course went. In case you're interested in the next training, if you're part of database and everything, just feel free to write so I can know how many people we're going to have. In case you want to embed or be part of the curriculum for Java, please tell me. And if you want to access some of the resources, then it's easier for me to match it with also so that would be good. So just give me feedback.
Once you have your project, you want to define the class. And this is your class. These are the fields, these are the members. Okay? So inside the employee class, we will have the fields like this. Because every employee in every organization, we are saying every employee will have an employee ID. As we have, that employee will also have a name. They will also have a social security number. they will also have a salary. So those are the fields. So that when we create an object of employee, we can assign those values. So let's have those fields together. Then we come now to the methods section. So you can open that file, copy and paste, or you can type, no problem. Once you have the class set. Yes. So these are the key fields in this class of employee. So if you are dealing with an employee, then we will have an employee ID, we will have a name, we will have a stream, we will have a social security number, and we will have a salary. Okay? So if we are dealing, for example, with our program, if we are developing a program that will be selling cars, okay, vehicles, what should be the attributes of the vehicle class? So in vehicles, what should we have the attributes? We'll have registration number. The other attribute for vehicle is chassis number. The other one is model. The other one is date of manufacture. Year of manufacture, and all the others. For each one of these attributes or fields, we will have a getter and a setter method. The same way we have for this. For example, for employee ID, we have a setter method called set employee ID. That is to keep the value that the user has provided to the field employee ID, to assign a value. Because our user will be typing values. So you pick that value and to be assigned to the object with field employee ID or name or salary. So every attribute and a field will have a setter and a getter method. The getter method will retrieve the value for us, to retrieve the value so that we can show the user. Okay? So that we can show the user. Now, if we, and in that case, how do we get to use this class? We get to use that class in this section called, if you go back to the main, you could use the main method to insert your class. So I'll open this. Look at how we are accessing our class here. We are saying we are creating a new object of our class called employee N. Then we set the ID to value 101. Now our new object will have a value of 101 on the employee ID field at this, after this line is executed. We will also have a salary of this much after that line is executed. Okay, so we are now assigning values to our object. The object will be instantiated, and the object will now be a real world object existing. So we are assigning that, we print out the values that we've assigned here. In this case, that is what we are doing at that point. So we set and then we end. But this is a little bit manual. We will make the program a bit interactive so that we will not be putting static values, because at this point the values are static. So we just modify it. Next exercise we do is to modify that program so that it interacts with the user. Okay. So I want us to have this also. It is in example, solution, home example, and you have employee test. Employee test. You don't have to add a class because you already have a main method in your class, the one which was created automatically. So you only need to put this code
You only need to put this code inside that main method of yours, which was created when you created the activity.
For those guys who are sure how to code. So you use some methods you use to set the value and as you retrieve the value. The ones that are setting accept values as parameters. Yeah. So that I can read that's why you see accepting.
This one and then the text that value is after key it assigns for the field. Yeah, you have now to modify the program so that it asks you to enter this. So which we're doing. So that if you run this, so we want to modify our program further so that it expects input from the user instead of just displaying, instead of assigning static values to our objects. Okay? So we will, in the main method section of the program, to import, I want us to import a class that will help us key in values from the screen, from the output area. So you import java.util.scan. Java.util.scan. So that we are importing that package, which will then help us to key in values from the keyboard. So import state. After the package. Now we go ahead. Once we have that, we declare an object of scanner type, which will help us to create stuff. So we say scanner. Go to your main method before you declare employee. Then you say scanner. SN, for example, we can use use. So user input is equals to new scanner system.in. So we declare scanner as an input. This will then help us to get input from the user. Instead of assigning manually values, we comment this line where we are assigning the value manually. Comment using 2 forward slashes. Then we tell the user system.out.println. We ask the user enter user input dot next int. So these are very important. This is a very important line. These are very important 2 lines. This is very important 2 lines. After we comment this, just after we comment the manual assignment of values. I don't know if it's visible or you need to erase this text. Maybe this is better. Yeah, so we are talking about this 3. This 3. So you comment this by /. Then you tell the user, ask the user enter the employee's SSN. Then you say, whatever the user is entering, assign it to MID. Assign it to the values, assign it to the MID field, whatever the user asks.